Hello, welcome back to the channel. This is Lemmy from lotr, and while you see me struggling to open this package, I will spoil what's inside of it. It's the command pack from the goblins from Goblin Town, and today I'm gonna show you how I do the bases for my Goblin Town and how I paint the Goblin King. And this, what you see right here, is the main reason I wanted a Goblin Town army, and it is the poop bucket underneath the throne. It's fucking awesome. So let's get started. I first glued some sticks used to coffee stirring sticks onto bases, after which I cut them to size. I don't try to go as close to the base as you can, but give them a little bit more random sizes, make it look a little bit more raggedy. I use PVA glue for gluing it on the bases, but in the end I realized I should have textured the wood, because sometimes they come loose while I am trimming them to size. But in the end I just use even more glue to solve that little problem. You can do a lot at the same time, and you're gonna need to do a lot at the same time because Goblin Town is a real horde army. And I use this paint scheme for all the other wood on, for example, the Goblin Scribe as well. So once they're glued down, before I even apply the spray, I carve some texture in it with a pretty blunt hobby knife, and I just go to town on it, like really scrape it and make sure there is a nice deep indentation left behind, and this is where most of the time they come loose and I have to glue them again. But every time so far after the second round of gluing they stick to it like it's nothing. And I have had zero problems with the sticks coming loose. You can also drill a little hole in it, make some really deep scratches with a sharper blade. Just do whatever you want with it. It just needs to look horrible. It's Goblin Town, nothing should be looking clean. That's my mentality behind my painting scheme and how I handled this. As you can see now, I base coated it with chaos black, and now I'm gonna slather some mournfang brown on top of that. The chaos black is mostly so the wood is sealed, and I don't spend 2 hours trying to paint some mournfang brown on it and it drying out before I can spread it evenly. Once that's dry, I apply a fuckload of agrax earthshade, making it look real nasty. And the next step I forgot to record, because I apparently am incapable of recording something. And that's a drybrush of XV88. I do it lightly and sometimes I go a little bit harder so it gets a more splotchy effect. Makes it look like some parts of the wood are more stepped on. It's a little route they take. And with they I mean the goblins, of course. But before you do that, make sure you let the agrax earthshade dry thoroughly, because it's gonna take a little while, because as you see I use a really large amount of it. Now let's start painting the king. I base coated him with grey seer. It was already painted, so I don't have a lot of detail in the model itself, but I try to work with what I have. Gonna put it like that. After grey seer I use rakarth flesh, and it's gonna follow the same painting style as my normal goblins, with some differences here and there, so it's still pretty much worth watching. Please keep watching. Now I use carroburg crimson to around the pustules, the zits, the infected flesh, whatever you wanna call it, and whatever he has on his body. It's real nasty, especially around his face, the big blob underneath his chin. Don't forget his man boobs. I definitely don't speak out of experience, but it should be a little red underneath that. And next up is Seraphim sepia. Use this on his legs, on his face, wherever there's a lot of detail, but it doesn't look like it's infected or it should be red. And I mainly do this to give the model a little bit more interest and a little bit more variety in the undertones he has. You do it on the legs, the hands, the face, and the back of the knee, that sort of places. And I'm gonna need to pull a lot of detail out of this because the previous paint job was pretty rough. I don't think I have any pictures, but I have. I'll put them right here. I also use carroburg crimson on his back. I used it to make sure his back stands out a little bit, and I think in the end it turns out pretty good. Now I just use kroak green to give some places a little bit more of a disgusting look on top of this. And kroak green, I just love that shade paint for some reason. It really does the trick for me. And I try to use it in as much painting schemes as I can, just because I really love watching the color and I really think the finish on it is real nice. So I put it under his armpits, that kind of stuff. Now comes the fun part, and that's dry brushing with palette witch flash. And stay tuned to the end of the video where you can hear me suffer and just reflect on life, because while recording this part of the video the paint started separating, so I closed the lid on the painting bottle, but I didn't close it all the way. And as I started shaking, paint went fucking everywhere. This was a new bottle, it's half empty now. And if you want to see my honest reaction to that, just keep watching till the end. You can hear a defeated man, so let this be a warning. And while I was talking, you can start to see the details coming through on the, I was gonna say Witch King, on the Goblin King. And I'm really loving how this pretty easy paint scheme makes sure you have a lot of different parts of interest on such a big model. And everybody loves to dry brush. It's relatively easy and gives a nice end result in general. And while we're watching me paint, I can tell you about my brother-in-law who has started a Rivendell army. He is down to be in the battle report I wanted to record. So in the near future you might see my first battle report using the modern rules and see how my Goblin Town army will obliterate Rivendell. With obliterate I mean get wrecked, probably. It's the worst army to be facing Elrond with Rivendell Knights, but I'll try make it work. And once you're happy with the dry brushing, you can go over to the next color, that's Grey Seer, if you're following along with me. I painted his hair Grey Seer. It's a very light grey. It's white if you don't have pure white next to it, gonna say it like that. And since the hair detail is pretty much lost because of the previous paint job and I'm too stingy to buy paint stripper, I try to paint as much hair there was and try not to invent hair, and I really had to use the Games Workshop photos on the site as a reference. And now I paint XV88 on his loincloth. I use XV88 for most of my goblins, but in the end I try to mix it up with some darker and lighter shades. Just because it's Goblin Town, nothing is supposed to be uniform or clean. They just scavenge what they can find. I can already tell this voiceover will be a nightmare to edit for me later on. Now I've started to paint the tassels on the pickaxe he's holding. I paint them doombull brown. I tend to use doombull brown for anything that's supposed to be real leathery, and for urkhai skin. That's the only two instances I would ever use doombull brown, and it gives a nice contrast with all the other browns I tend to use. Because the next brown is mournfang brown, which I use for the wood on his pickaxe. Now for the only metal part on this whole mini, I just use leadbelcher. It's the same I use for my normal goblins. Now for some ushabti bone on the teeth in his crown, the skull on his pickaxe, the heads on his pickaxe as well I used it for. And this color I really like to use for those things, and I tend to use the same combo to make it look like a real skeleton, a real teeth, that sort of stuff. And after I use ushabti bone, I always use seraphim sepia. And if you combine those two, you get pretty realistic looking bone color with some nice depth to it. And a friend of mine actually gave me this tip, and I did not stop using it ever since. The next day I believe I went out, bought seraphim sepia, and it's one of the shade paints I really love because it does so much for bony things, and you'll probably see it in this video as well. I think the end result looks pretty amazing for the amount of effort you put in it. And while I get your attention, I forgot to record this as well. I use white scar to paint his eyes, and I also did this with the other goblins I have, and when you put them all together I really think it looks pretty eerie and spooky and kind of cool. And it's one of the few models I actually paint the eyes of, because for most models the eyes are pretty tiny, but for some reason these goblins have surprisingly large eyes for their size. So I tend to paint just the white of their eyes, and it gives a nice creepy vibe, which is fitting if you ask me for Goblin Town. And once you've done that and you're still following along, I use agrax earthshade on everything that is not skin or bone or hair. What's left of his pickaxe I paint with agrax earthshade, his loincloth, and that's about it. And for the metal on his pickaxe I also used rust effects. Those are the pigments I use. My wife bought them. I keep forgetting the brand of it, but at least here in Belgium you can get that pretty easy in any shop that sells anything of miniatures. They always have, I think it's Revel or something, and they always have a little set of pigments, and I really like to use a rust pigment in that set, because it gives a really nice end result of a real weathered and rusty metal, which is also very fitting in Goblin Town. I think it's probably very humid down there. And if you're not happy with the dry brushing yet, you can try and apply some of the carroburg crimson again, very lightly on some of the places. Just like around his face, for example, the boils there will naturally draw more attention to the face. That's something I did on this model as well and forgot to record. This is a fucking shit show. If you're watching, you're a fucking legend. I hope you learned something in this video. This is how my goblins are looking in the end with the Goblin King. And I personally love the way they come out. The goblins are very easy to paint. The Goblin King, I used pretty much the same technique, but added those couple things that really make him stand out. That and his ginormous size compared to, for example, the Goblin Captain. So in the end I'm very happy with this model, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this as well, and if you didn't even enjoy the Goblin King, you at least enjoyed seeing me paint the bases, because I'm actually very proud of the bases. It's easy to do, it's a nice end result, and it's very typical for Goblin Town. And the keen eyed viewers as well might have noticed I put some shit underneath the Goblin King. I asked about this on my Instagram page. It's Lemmy Mini Lotr for the people who want to get a say in what I paint and how I paint it. I sometimes post polls on my story, and the choice that wins, I follow it, and I usually do this because I have two options and I like both. But in that poll, I asked if I should clone the shit bucket, at least the shit part of it, and put it underneath the Goblin King like he shit himself, and just pretty much everybody said yes, so I did it, and I still have the mold of it, so I can produce endless amount of shit. I'll probably use this for objective markers, those kind of things. But it's fun to paint shit, and it's easy to paint shit. And I've said shit a lot of times in this video, and I don't think YouTube is gonna recommend this to anyone anymore, but it's fun. And I hope you at least enjoyed this video. If you wanna see me paint shit and show you how I paint shit and other stuff for objective markers, please comment that. If enough people comment I want to see shit, I will make a video about it and go in as much detail about shit that I can. So if you want to see me paint shit, you know what to do. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, comment shit, and maybe show it to a friend who might enjoy this video. If his goblin army hasn't been painted yet and you want to inspire him to paint that grey army of his or her, but YouTube statistics don't lie, you're a bunch of men around 24 to 34, which is about my age. So yeah, if you want to show this to a friend, that would be fucking awesome. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye. Following scene might be concerning to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Oh fuck. Oh fuck. Oh, I fucked up. Oh damn. Oh no.